Welcome to Lecture 8 on the topic of topography. This subject is part of the agricultural degree offered at North Melbourne Institute of TAFE. Please visit our website www.nmit.edu.au. I'm Dr. Nikki Cooley. Taking the time to observe is important in agronomy. Develop the skill to actively identify physical aspects on your farm or the farm that you're managing, and how they impact on your farming practice. Once you have identified these, you are able to optimize your enterprise management. You can make this physicality become an advantage or an asset to your agronomy rather than a problem. As a rule of thumb, I would always advise work with nature rather than against it. In this lecture today, we are going to start with a definition of topography and aspect. We will spend some time learning about Australian topography. We will look at topography and soil management, topography and light, how water and nutrients can be impacted on your topography. We will also think about aspects and situations of wind, and how you can optimize your planting to take the most of your situation. Topography is a term that refers to the characteristics of lands in terms of slope, elevation, and orientation. In focusing on a topographic landform, it is possible to ascertain information on environmental quality, agriculture, and hydrology, such as determining weather patterns, managing soil erosion, and understanding drainage characteristics. A landform is an individual topographic feature which can be used as a minor as a cliff or a sand dune, or as major as a peninsula or a mountain range. The Australian continent, with the exception of Antarctica, is the lowest, flattest, and driest of the 7 continents. The continent can be broken into 4 major landform regions: the coastal plains, the eastern highlands, the central lowlands, and the western plateaus. These landform regions have been created by movements of the Earth's crust, by rivers and river erosion, and changes in climate and sea level. Topography is described as an abiotic or non-living factor that can impact on plant growth and development. The image on your screen is from Geoscience Australia and illustrates the Australian topographical areas. Australia is located in the Indo-Australian plate, and it is the most stable of continents in that it has been least affected by seismic or earthquakes, orogenetic, mountain building, and volcanic forces during the past 400 million years. It is also the flattest continent, with an average elevation of 330 metres and less than 1% of the total area over 1,000 metres. There are 4 major land regions that present different challenges and require specific agronomical management to optimise productivity. The coastal plains are a narrow strip of land along the eastern coast of Australia that extends from Queensland to Victoria. It is a flat and has relatively high rainfall. It is well suited to agriculture, although it tends to be populated by cities. These include Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. The Eastern Highlands are also known as the Great Dividing Range. They are called this because they divide rivers in Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria into eastward flowing and westward flowing rivers. It is an area of hills, valleys, and mountains located west to the coastal plains. The range extends north to the Cape York Peninsula in Queensland and south to Tasmania. The mountains and hills in the Eastern Highlands were created through a number of processes. Most were created through folding and faulting. Folded mountains are created when 2 tectonic plates collide with one another, causing the land to deform, while fault mountains are created when the crust breaks into pieces, allowing some parts to be uplifted. Some of these mountains are volcanic. The eastern highlands are also home to a number of gorges or valleys with cliff walls. The eastern highlands are the highest part of Australia. The eastern highlands are tall enough to affect the weather in the rest of the region. They cause rain to fall upon the coastal plains and keep central lowlands dry. Compared with mountain range in the rest of the world, however, the eastern highlands are not very high at all. The steepness of a slope affects plant growth through differential incidence of solar radiation, wind velocity and soil type. A steep slope is susceptible of rapid surface runoff and soil erosion, which could cause soil degradation. It is known that where a landscape serves as a barrier against the movement of pollen or seed between two plant populations, the populations will begin to differ either through mutation or genetic drift. However, depending on the plant species and their modes of dispersal, habitat fragmentation, and their separation by distance, this may always not appear as an effective barrier. Research recently found that hummingbirds seem to be more effective than bees in transferring pollen of the Penstemonium from one mountain region to another across large distances. The altitude or elevation of the land with respect to the level of the sea surface influences plant growth and development primarily through temperature effect. The relationship of this abiotic factor to temperature is that of distance from the equator to the Arctic poles. According to Sterling in 1999, temperature increases by 1 degree for every 100-meter increase in altitude by dry air. This abiotic factor is an important consideration in the crop or site selection for more productive crop farming. For example, coconut prefers an elevation not exceeding 600 meters above sea level. For better quality, tea is best grown above 1,000, while rubber requires not more than 500 because at higher elevations latex flow is restricted. The seasonality of ripening of various fruit crops, for example durian, is modified when they are planted in different elevations. The effect of land elevation on plant growth and development is apparent when investigating a high-rise mountain. Dominance of certain plant types varies with elevation. The change in height from sea level to 4,876 meters from the foot to the top of the mountain in the Pavilion Andes or New Guinea, temperature change from tropical to subtropical temperature and subarctic to Arctic. Likewise, if the influence of this abiotic factor on plant growth and distribution is noticeable, there is a change from the tropical vegetation at the coastal base of the oak forest, then conifers, and finally a tundra-like scene with hardy grass, mosses and dwarf shrubs. At the Arctic top, only occasional lichens are found on exposed rocks, while in the tropics, the timberline above which no more trees grow may be found between 13,000 and 14,000 feet above sea level. Other things that accompany high altitudes are radiation quality differences and humidity changes. The central lowlands are in the inner part of Australia, starting at the Murray-Darling and extending through to the Great Artesian Basin and to the north of the Gulf of Carpentaria. They account for about 25% of the continent and are characteristic by extremely flat, low-lying plains of sedimentary rock. The sedimentary rocks of the central lowlands were created by sediments or silt and biological matter, deposited when the inner part of Australia was covered by inland sea millions of years ago. The Great Artesian Basin is one of the largest artesian groundwater basins in the world, and it covers an astonishing area. The central lowlands also receive the least amount of rain in a year out of all the regions, on average less than 125 millimeters per year. They contain large deserts and salt plains, which as a rule of thumb is not suited to most farming practices. A key advantage of flat terrain is the ability to capture surface water runoff from the farm and reuse that water in an irrigation system. There are many examples of such systems in the Murray-Darling Basin. The majority of farms have recycled systems that not only improve irrigation efficiency, but are very effective in making sure nutrients are retained on the farm, thus preventing nutrient loads entering natural waterways. This image from the Murray-Darling Dairy website shows such systems, a recycle system and an effluent pond, used extensively throughout the flat regions of the northeast. The Western Plateau topographic region covers approximately 1/3 of the continent. It is a region of arid lands which includes significant parts of Western Australia, South Australia and the Northern Territory. The Western Plateau comprises a massive block of igneous and metamorphic rock, with some rocks being over 3.6 billion years old. The region is regarded as relatively flat, as the average elevation is less than 500 meters. This is due to extensive erosion which has occurred for millions of years. The following resource, put together by the ABS on the Australian topography, is not one required for this subject, but may be found useful in your future studies or work. Aspect can mean several things, but in this context it generally refers to the horizontal direction to which a mountain slope faces. It can influence temperature. This is due to the angle of the sun's rays which comes into contact with the ground. It also has an impact on radiation. In Australia, the remnants of rainforest are almost always found on the east-facing slopes, which are protected from the dry westerly winds. A slope on the eastern edge of the Rockies towards the Great Plains is described as having an easterly aspect. A slope which falls down to a deep valley to its western side, and a shallower one on its eastern side, has what is described as a westerly aspect, or is a west-facing slope. The term can also be used to describe the shape or alignment of a coastline. Here the aspect is in the direction which the coastline is facing towards the sea. For example, a coastline with a sea on the northwest, as is most of Queensland, has a northeasterly aspect. At northern latitudes, south-facing slopes receive greater radiation than north-sloping faces. In the northern hemisphere, a south-facing slope, which is more open to sunlight and warm winds, will therefore be generally warmer and drier due to higher levels of evapotranspiration than a north-facing slope. Plants growing on a south-facing slope may green up earlier in the spring and suffer more heat stress in the summer in the northern latitudes. When talking about aspect, light and temperature are normally interconnected, and it is not always simple to tell which has the most dominating effect on your plant productivity and farming system. The highest proportion of direct sunlight changes whether you're in the northern or southern hemisphere. The highest proportion of direct sunlight in the southern-facing slopes is in the northern hemisphere, while in the southern hemisphere it is on the north-facing slopes. These sides of the slopes tend to be warmer due to a larger proportion of direct sunlight. This knowledge can impact on your farming systems and management and enable you to optimize the position or aspect of your crop. The movement or flow of water and topography is very related. There have been many studies to look at mountainous regions or flat regions and how water collection can be optimized for plant productivity. It is also worth noting that rainfall can be influenced by topography. particularly if you are close to mountainous regions. Forests close to coastal regions can increase the precipitation due to the movement of warm and cool air around seas, and them coupling with ice nucleating bacteria, which enable seed clouding. This optimizes the conditions to produce rain clouds near these conditions. And finally, where water-soluble nutrients will occur in the soil, they will tend to migrate along the soil-water pathways. Therefore, any movement of water by your topography influences may also significantly influence your nutrients. Topography can alter wind dynamics. Such examples are around mountains or around very large open flat areas. If your crop is in a very large open flat area and subject to wind damage, you may wish to consider shelter belts. Many research trials have demonstrated the success of shelter belts. They can increase crop and pasture production, even though they take out land, and there is some competition for water and nutrients. Agrometeorology is the study of the impact of wind on plant growth, and it can be negative or beneficial depending on the wind direction and velocity of the wind, and also what you're trying to grow and where. Beneficial impacts of the wind can include turbulence in the atmosphere and thus increase the supply of carbon dioxide to plants, resulting in greater photosynthetic rates. Other beneficial impacts can alter the balance of hormones. They can increase ethylene production in barley and rice and decrease gibberellic acid content of roots and shoots in rice. Nitrogen concentration of both barley and rice can increase with wind speed. Wind can influence production in two ways: a physiological impact or a mechanical impact. The physiological impact increases processes like transpiration and also can alter stomatal conductance. Wind that is warm can accelerate the drying parts of plants by replacing humid air by dry air in the intercellular spaces. Wind can result on mechanical impacts on plants. Strong wind can damage shoots, can cause lodging in wheat, sugarcane, banana, etc. Can impact on flower and fruit shedding. Can uproot crops and trees with shallow roots. Cold winds may cause chilling and injuries, and winds can cause soil erosion, and soil can cause bad aeration in the root zone. Thus, physical damage to the crop can result. Often there is an important interaction with wind and temperature, particularly where the temperature is hot, as often found in Australian cropping. Think carefully about your planting and your topography. You want to optimize your plant productivity with respect to your localized topography. You can start with the general rules of the northern and southern hemisphere. Where is it best from these perspectives to lay out your crops? Look at row direction and orientation. Where will your crops optimize sunlight, temperature? Think about the water movement. Will wind be a problem, and humidity? Row spacing can also be used to optimize these components, as well as plant density. In the case studies below, I will give one example how modern GPS technology can enable optimal positioning of your crop. As presented in this previous slides, there are a few rules of thumb which explains the complex relationship between topography and growing crops productively. The next part of the lecture will be separated into a few case studies. These case studies have been compiled to illustrate or present a wide range of issues associated with topography and agronomy. Please read the associated readings and answer or complete the tasks connected with these readings. You will need to do this to complete your notes on this topic. Please read the following article by Mariner et al. In 2009 in the impact on farm size and topography on plant and insect diversity on managed grasslands in the Alps. A number of questions or tasks have been associated with reading this reference. Please complete these questions to complete your notes on this topic. You will find the notes on Moodle under this topic. The following abstract is an abstract on GIS-based land suitability evaluation for rapeseed oil crop. It gives an overview about how you might assess your topography and how suitable a certain crop is. Please read this abstract to complete your notes. A copy of this abstract is also available on Moodle. According to the findings by Per Ballotti in 2009, what were the main topographical limiting factors for the establishment of a rapeseed oil crop in Iran? On Moodle is attached the following reference. Please read this before attempting to answer the following question. Ontal et al. Compared 3 bioenergy cropping systems. They were interested in trying to find out what influences root production in these systems, topographical components or other components. Please write a short paragraph about what they concluded as the most impacting component. What did they conclude as part of the most impacting component on the bioenergy cropping systems? The following article is on the impact of farming in hilly areas. This example is based in Italy, but the findings here can be translated to many other regions. Runoff is one of the major causes of soil loss in these areas. Please read the following article and answer the following questions that are posted up on Moodle under this reference and topic. You will need to complete these questions to fulfill your notes on this topic. Light quality management in fruit orchards, physiological and technological aspects was investigated in 2012. Please read the following abstract and answer the 6 questions that can be found on Moodle associated with this article to complete the notes on this topic. The following article by Slaughter et al. In 2012 shows how tractor-based real-time chemometric global positioning systems can be used to geospace mapping of row crop implementation so that you can optimize your row crops to the nearest centimeter. If you are able to do this, you will be able to optimize both your light and your temperature conditions for your topographical situation. And the final case study presented in this lecture is by Studmere and Spudgers in 2007. This is an article on the influence of windbreak orientation, shade and rainfall interception on wheat and lupin growth in the absence of below-ground competition. Please read this article attached on Moodle and write some notes on the impacts of orientation, shade and rainfall interception to complete your notes on this topic. And this brings us to the close of Lecture 8 on Topography and Agronomy. As you can see, topography is complex, and in order to optimize crop production, you should consider and where possible optimize or use your topography as an advantage. Observation is the initial tool in understanding topography. Understanding plant physiology and how your topography may be beneficial or have negative impacts on your crop productivity will also greatly assist you to optimize your system. Many of the plant physiological processes here have only been touched on as we describe them in other subjects in more detail. And finally, case studies have been presented as actual examples of researches and concepts presented in this lecture.